Hey guys, it's Sheena Williams coming to you from Krav Maga Salem and the Art of Badass. I'm joined today by one of my favorite people on the entire planet, Michael Bann. Him and I have been working together now for a decade or longer, I think, at this point in time. We've shared quite a few stories and situations. We've been teaching people for many, many years, and there's nobody I'd rather share my time with and share some stories with. So, without further ado, Michael Bann, say hello to people, let them know who you are and a little bit about your background.
All right. So my name is Michael Bann. I'm a registered nurse first, I guess. Been a nurse for 28 years now. 20 of that has been in the emergency department. I have been training and doing things with self-defense steadily now for the past 10 years. I got involved in that though, coming from the hospital standpoint, trying to make my emergency department safer, and a concern for my fellow nurses dealing with the strange and sometimes violent population that inhabits the ERs, and got involved in teaching a de-escalation class, for lack of a better term, or how to deal with violent people, and taught that for 8 years. And I think that's where you and I first kind of got together and started to get to know each other was in our working in the ED, and then starting to teach that class together.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And for those of you who don't know Michael and I personally, the emergency room that we worked in is one of the busiest in the nation. Certainly the busiest emergency room west of the Mississippi. And I'll just leave it at that. That way we keep it nice and vague, but it's a very busy place. On top of that, when Michael and I started teaching together, we were the most common compliment I got was we were the perfect yin and yang. I'm 5'1" and female with a very boisterous and loud demeanor, where Michael is kind of the opposite. He's very calm in the way he talks, direct in his points, but he is. What are you, 6'2"?
He's 6 foot. You always try to give me extra inches, but I'm actually only 6 foot tall.
You always feel taller when we're sparring. Let me just put it that way. So that's we've always had a really good give and take when we taught together. And as a matter of fact, I used to get in trouble because when we would teach, people would cancel out of other classes to join our classes.
Correct. Yes, that happened actually quite a bit.
So, but that's absolutely how we got to know each other. And at that time, Michael is too kind to say that he ran the emergency room. He was the guy that everybody really trusted. And, when things hit the fan, the first person to be called was Michael. And him and I have been in our fair share of scraps. Now, I do want to get back to that, and I want to hit a lot on that. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about your football career.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yes. So I played football for a number of years. It was a huge part of my life. I started in junior high playing contact, played all through high school, received a scholarship, played in college, and actually my scholarship to football is how I was able to pay to go to nursing school to become a nurse. So my college experience is very unique. I got teased by the football team for being a nurse, and I got teased by the nursing students for being just a dumb job. So I catch it at both ends. It was very fun.
But I think it really gave you a unique insight because you are, and I've told you this before, this is not new to you, but you are one of the few individuals of somebody your size and your strength, because you are incredibly strong, to be able to not muscle things and to be able to work through techniques without just using your size. And that's really unique. And I know as a smaller female, having a training partner who can lay on the pressure, lay on the strength, but also know when to pull back when I'm trying to work a technique or trying to work through something is absolutely invaluable, incredibly rare.
Well, so while in everyday life I may be bigger than most people. In my football career, I was actually smaller than most people. I was actually the smallest person on my offensive line. And yes, I played offensive line. I actually played left tackle. And if you so you can already judge right by the pro football players and the people they put in their position of left tackle. You don't see many 6 foot tall, 230-pound left tackles in the NFL, right? And for good reason. But that's the position I played. And I played it well. I made all conference in my league. I was only NAIA, which is a small division of college football, but it's still college football. Everybody that was in that division was somehow just not quite the right size or half a step too slow, but they were all the all-state players in high school. And so that's who made up that level of football. So we played really good football. But back to my point, I was very undersized. Most of the people I went against were always 3 or 4 inches taller and 20 or 30 pounds heavier. So technique became very important. The only way I was successful was because my technique was better than their technique. And yeah, I mean, I had decent strength, but that can only take you so far. When somebody can bench press how much you weigh and just lift you up off the ground, it doesn't matter how strong you are when you're not connected to anything. So you had to learn to have technique.
Absolutely. And like you said, that it translates really well into how you teach in self-defense. And again, we've been teaching together for entirely too long, and we don't see any end in sight. So we started off teaching a program together. We started teaching off a program where it was designed around helping hospital staff, whether it be the psychiatric staff, security, emergency room staff, anybody who dealt with people with psychiatric issues, or maybe sometimes it was coming off of pain medication or anesthesia that they weren't necessarily used to. And the whole point was to obviously recognize the adjustment or the change in behavior, try to de-escalate as much as possible. But, it obviously progressed into having to apply restraints on people, especially if they were a danger to themselves or others. And I can say for one, Michael will tell you the same thing. Him and I have been in more scraps together and also individually than I think either one of us has the ability to count to. So let's chat a little bit about that. Let's chat about our time together in the emergency room. There's a couple of stories that stick out to me personally, but we are here talking about the art of badass. We're talking about self-defense. In your training, obviously there's a certain amount of training you get for that position, but it's never enough. And we see that from our point of view. We have a lot of people come in from the medical field saying, but they've seen somebody attacked, or they've been attacked, or they're fearful of being attacked, wanting to learn more information. So can you talk a little bit about where that transition was for you when you recognized you didn't have enough training, or the staff around you didn't have enough training, and so you started seeking out additional training?
So the big thing that got me looking in the first place, that led me to what we taught in the hospital, was just the high number of injuries that were occurring to the staff. That was the thing that made me start looking that there's got to be something we can do to protect the staff.
Which is not unique in a hospital setting or healthcare in general.
Correct. It's not. You don't hear about it a lot because nurses are notorious underreporters for the violence that they put up with. Because in doing a nurse's job, nurses tend to expect and put up with people being extremely rude to them, cursing at them, cursing around them, making vague threats. That's just kind of how nurses were always brought up. Now, nursing is trying to go through a little bit of a change where we don't put up with those things as much anymore, and that's a good thing. Nurses are feeling empowered to speak up and go, you can't talk to me that way. But for a long time, nurses would take abuse, and it was just part of the job because that's how people, you're the nurse, and I feel bad, so I get to treat you like crap. And so but anyway, so back to answering the question. Sorry. So the number of injuries is what made me look for something to do. I, of course, at that time was looking for something that was more physical because, again, that's how my brain worked. But then I got into the program because that's what the hospital, some of our management said, this is a really good program. It was developed by the same people who developed the only thing that hospitals used across the country for like the last 20 years. But the problem is they stayed with that program that's 20 years old, even though the people that created it said, this really isn't working out. We have better programs. We made a better program. We've made a better thing. We've moved along. But the hospital didn't want to move along. So anyway, we found this program. It's a very effective program. But it's a program that actually deals with how to recognize an impending assault rather than waiting for the assault to happen and do something about it. How can I diffuse a situation before the situation ever starts to occur? And while, of course, at first I was as skeptical as anyone that could actually work, but I went through the program. I gave it the best shot I could possibly give, and the amazing thing was I found that it actually worked. It didn't work all the time. There were still some failures, but the more I did it, the better I got at it, the more success I had, to where, we went from like having a hands-on event, at least every day that we worked, to maybe we only had one once a week, and that is a huge step, right? There were some nights where we'd go hands-on with the same person 3 or 4 times, and so to have, and then of course our injuries, and once we got the staff kind of doing it too, which of course was another hard sell and a whole other story. How long it took the staff to get on board with this thing that seems like it's some kind of mumbo jumbo. But once we got them on board, the rate of injuries dropped, right? The 3 departments that this got used for and targeted for because we had the most injuries, we flipped that on its head and we became the 3 departments that had the least injuries. And I feel it was directly tied to the program.
Which was a great program, and I agree with you. I think it was tied to the program. I mean, I got to watch those numbers drop myself. However, I'm also going to add this. It was also incredibly successful because the people who were teaching, or at least a good portion, not all, but a good portion of the people who were teaching it actually did exactly what you did, and they went back and they actually tried it, and they tried it several times, and they found that it worked. And so the people that they had teaching it, knowing that it worked, and the departments that they worked in, were able to say, yes, this is my situation. And as we got to teaching together, we were able to share stories about, this is when it worked for me. This is a situation that it worked for me. And because we did believe in it, that belief in the system and the fact that it did work for us, those people who were kind of in the trenches more often, more people put their belief and confidence in it. And with that belief and confidence came more success.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with you. Right. We got real-time results, real-time effects. We saw that it worked, and we were able to say, hey, this is really working. And then when we went and taught classes, we could say, hey, I can tell you that thing you just went through, that story you just told me, I went through the exact same thing. This will help you. You just have to trust that these kind of things, work. This is actually based on how people decide to do things. So
Oh, absolutely. It got to the point, guys. Michael, I'm going to tell a story. It got to the point, especially with Michael and I, that we were so pinpoint and knew exactly what somebody was going to do. True story. That there was one time that Michael and I were sitting outside of a psychiatric room with a patient that was about to be discharged who did not want to be discharged. And Michael said to me and the other security guy, we're going to hand him his backpack. He's right handed, so he's going to take it in his right hand. He's then going to immediately swing that backpack at me. When he does, we're going to do A, B, and C. This is what I want you two to do. And once that's done, this will be the next step. I knew he was spot on. I knew it. I agreed. I said, yep, that's exactly what's going to happen. The other security guy looked at us like, yeah, what voodoo are you two pulling? Right? And sure enough, we opened the door. We handed the guy his backpack. He grabbed it with his right hand, and almost as if we had written the situation, everything went down in exactly the same way. He was cuffed and placed back in the room. All sorts of fun stuff proceeded after that. There's some procedural stuff that happens. But the other security guy just looked at us too, like, what just happened? How in the world did you two know that? And it was because of this training, because, there's only so many, we all love to think of ourselves as special and unique individuals, but really we respond in similar ways under stress. And so that's kind of what this program taught us. And I think was a big launching point for me personally into the self defense world. I quickly learned doing my position as private security that the training I was provided was severely lacking. And so progressing through training for myself just to keep myself safe, I found that really, really quickly that diving deeper into the psychology of the way people respond under stress is important because when we're talking about the emergency room, nobody's there in the best day of their lives. So you have to quickly become an expert on the way people respond in the high stress situations if you want to be good at your job, right, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people are caused stress by being in the emergency room. So if you think about things that cause people stress, right? So you're physically sick or injured, that's stressful to you. You're taken outside your normal routine and put into a place where you don't have control over the situation and what's going on. That's stressful to you. This whole thing you start thinking about is going to cost you a lot of money. That's stressful to you. And then, if you happen to be under the influence of anything, right, that makes your all your reactions even on a different scale, right? And so sometimes when people come to the ER, they have all of those stressors on top of, what's going on, right? And then their family stress. And so then, everybody who has family knows that sometimes your family can bring stress that you didn't even know you had. They can remind you how stressed you should be about things. So yeah, so it can be very stressful. And so it was very good to think about and to learn uh, that we actually share a lot more reactions than we're different about. Right? People react very similar to stressful situations, especially the more stress they get under, they tend to even fall into a narrower space as far as reactions.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we spend so much more time in kind of that social mindset and practicing the ways we behave, in a social setting, whether it's at work or even within the hierarchy of our families at home. But when you add that stressor, some of that stuff kind of just goes out the window. And then it becomes more of a primitive brain trying to kind of just figure out how to survive or how to make it through that situation. I think that plays a big part in it. And most of us don't spend a lot of time in that portion of our brain, so it's not a thought out process. It's simply responding to those stressors. And so it's not always great decision making. And it's very, very easy when you read a news story or hear a news story about somebody acting really, really dumb because you're thinking in that social mindset of, I would never do that type of thing. One of the things that we're talking about right now on one of the other classes that I'm hosting is we're talking about the way people will steal ridiculous stuff. We have a situation that just happened in South Salem last night where somebody broke into a vehicle because somebody had a case of toilet paper. like 6 rolls of toilet paper, which seems so silly, but given the current situation, it's a hot commodity. And so when we're talking about people who are, under certain financial stress, like many of us are right now, or worse, somebody who's going through an addiction withdrawal, right? For that person, it's life or death. So for you and I who think, oh, toilet paper, it's toilet paper. Like there's so many other issues. But for that person who could potentially, truthfully, lose their life from the withdrawal, it is life or death. And it feels like life or death through withdrawal. So it's kind of a funny thing the way we respond under stress. Not to get too off topic, because we could probably spend a lot of time on that topic.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're a lot like I am, and given all your many years in the emergency room, I'm sure you have a few fun war stories.
Fun.
Okay, let me rephrase. How about entertaining? Things that you like to share or shock people with.
Okay. Well, so this was interesting. So this is a good, this is a good story. This is entertaining, right? Uh, and this will also show how people, when they're under influences and being stressed, how they can react in very ways that make you go, what exactly are they? So we had this one patient who came in, who was there for just medical reasons, but this patient was a bilateral amputee. So he had lost both his legs just above his knees. It happened a long time ago. He's been living his life for many years, so his uh, stumps are well healed, right? No problems. He, though, becomes belligerent, starts cursing at nursing staff, uh, doing all sorts of things. I go in to talk to him to see if I can figure out what the problem is. The exchange he and I are having isn't going really well, and I'm like, well, sir, if you're not happy with what you're getting, you're welcome to leave. And this guy, so I'm standing beside the stretcher. I'm standing at the foot of the stretcher. He's laying in the bed, but this man jumps up to the foot of the stretcher, landing on his stumps, standing on the end of the bed so that he could yell at me from this standing position on his stumps on the bed. And I just, in that moment, I think to myself, all I have to do is take 2 steps back and he can never touch me, right? Because I've never had anyone jump up in the bed and stand up like that, right? That was a completely new and unique experience, and I've never had it since.
That is definitely unique. I know you've heard this story a gajillion times before, but I always kind of my entry story, kind of to test the waters of what kind of stories you can handle. I always give people the story about having to go up to one of the floor psychiatric rooms. We call them P rooms, but it's a locked unit, a locked room. And a lot of times those ones were specifically used for inmates who needed to be watched because it was a secured unit. This gentleman had been arrested by one of the local sheriff's offices. He had there had been a call for law enforcement for a domestic disturbance. As soon as law enforcement arrived on scene, he ran to the back of the trailer, barricaded himself into his room, and then took whatever pills he could find. So because of that, it turned out to be acetaminophen. Because of that, he had to be observed overnight. Well, and of course, this guy had warrants out for his arrest, so he was going to go to jail. That's just the standard. So the next morning, the local sheriff had shown up to take the guy fully into custody since he'd had his overnight observation. And so we get a call from security, and it's a code like, you got to hurry, you got to get there because things are hitting the fan. So I take off running. This is on the 6th floor, and we're not allowed to use elevators or anything like that. You got to book up all the stairs. These are big stairs. And so I, I get up there, and everybody's completely calm, which is not normal for a code. Like when something's happening, everybody on the floor is freaking out. People are running opposite directions because somebody's being violent. I get to the room, and everybody is calm. And inside the room is a nurse, a certified nurse's assistant. The officer is standing outside the room, kind of just shrugging his shoulders at me, like, I don't even know what you want me to do, right? I walk into the room, and All I see is this guy sitting on the bed. He's holding his eye, and through his couple of fingers is a plastic fork, actively moving. So I'm kind of looking at staff who are all completely calm. And I said, "Oh, I'm here. What can I help you with? What can I do for you?" And they said, "Well, yeah, he stuck a fork in his eye."
Wow.
I'm thinking, I'm not a doctor. He's not being violent toward anybody else. I don't know really what I can do. You've got law enforcement right outside the door. You've got the officer who's taking him to the jail right outside the door. And you call me? So I asked the nurse and the CNA, is he being violent? No, he's not being. Is he compliant? Yeah, he's fine. And so I just looked at him. I was like, dude, you stuck a fork in your eye? What for? And he's like, well, I didn't want to go back to jail. And I said, well, now you're going back to jail with an eye patch. Like, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Right? So they called the doctor. Doctor came in, took a look at his eye while I stood by to make sure he wasn't going to be violent with anybody else. They suited him with an eye patch, and off he went with the county officer. And I was like, well, stick a fork in him, he's done, I guess. I don't know. That oh, some of the calls you see when you're working in this industry is just it's a little insane. And again, this is another perfect example of somebody who is having a stress response. He took the pills because he didn't want to go to jail. He knew he had a warrant out for his arrest. He stuck a plastic fork in his eye because he didn't want to go to jail. Right? It's not a normal or rational decision, but that's just what he chose, right?
That's all you think of at the time.
Exactly. Didn't say it was smart. But yes, I've told people before. I mean, I think you could find anybody who's worked in the healthcare field, and they could probably write a story of unbelievable stories that people would never know happened, or even believe happened if they didn't know a healthcare worker. Because I mean, the stuff that they see and they deal with on a regular basis is pretty insane. And especially you, like I said, you've worked in one of the busiest emergency rooms in the United States. I talk about you pretty frequently when I talk about like my defensive tools class and the amount of bullet holes that you've patched up. People have this preconceived notion that, okay, if I hit you once with a bullet, you're going to go down. Even I have it happen in class every once in a while. Somebody says, oh, well, it's a headshot. Well, headshots only end alive 50% of the time. So it's still a gamble. So, that being said, especially with bullet holes and knife wounds, I want you to talk a little bit about that and kind of what you've seen.
Okay. Well, so knife wounds, slashing wounds come in often, and they're always look super impressive, but usually end up not being that life-threatening. But they can be, like I say, they can be extremely impressive because a big slash will open up and gape open, and man, you see all this red meat and tissue, and it looks terrible, but really it doesn't bleed that much, and it didn't get to anything vital, and so it's just not that big a deal. Anytime I've seen anyone with stab wounds, no one ever has just one stab wound unless they stab themselves, and you usually figure out that it hurts real bad, and then they don't stab themselves anymore. But anyone who's attacked with any kind of edge weapon, knife, or ice pick, or screwdriver, they get hit multiple times. So there's not just that one shot. Gunshots. Here's the thing: gunshots are just always a gamble. I mean, you just don't know. You think that every bullet is this devastating thing that tears a body apart, and sometimes it does, and then sometimes because of what the bullet may have gone through before it got to the person, it just doesn't do that big a deal. I've seen we pulled a 45 out of this guy's thumb here, right? Because the bullet went in right here and then lodged in the bones. It didn't go anywhere. Now, how does a 45 not blow somebody's thumb off their hand? It didn't. And that's because, hey, it went through like the car seat first or something like that, so, but still, people don't think about those kind of things.
No, and I think you're in a unique position because of your medical training and the things. I mean, you have so many years of medical training and experience to kind of weigh in on, but you also have a unique perspective in the fact that you are an incredible self-defense instructor who continually trains and seeks out the best training in the world, as well as you've also gone through firearms training. So, like I said, I think your unique perspective is one that's not seen very often. So I think having you talk about, you know, knife wounds and bullet wounds is incredibly informative for people who have that preconceived notion, oh, well, I don't need training. I have a gun.
Right. Well, and yes. So a gun is a great tool, but it is just that. It's just a tool, and it's only a useful tool if you can get to it in time, and everything goes exactly according to plan. And so you hit the person center mass, and you hit the right organ to drop the person right then. Which, in case anyone's wondering, the right organ to drop somebody right there is their heart. Everything else, the person technically can keep coming at you, right? So I can take a bullet and it can go right through my lung, come out the other side, lung drops, and I'll still come after you because I still have another lung, right? So you still have, I can take a shot to the liver. Is that going to kill me? Yes, but not before I can get to you, right? I'm not going to bleed to death before I can get to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's one of the things that we teach at our school is that, adrenalized blood, just adrenaline alone, somebody can still take a lethal shot and still continue to fight you for 17 to 20 seconds. That's not with the addition of things like alcohol or illegal narcotics like methamphetamine, PCP, Ambien, right? I mean, all the different narcotics that, get ourselves elevated. So it's absolutely vital that people recognize that. And that's part of that paradigm shift that we're trying so hard with folks like IBS and, Todd Fossey, his group, to make people understand. But again, yeah, I mean, your unique perspective of actually seeing people who have been shot, still walking, talking, fighting, is unique. You and I have both been there. I always tell the story about the guy who came in who had been shot 5 times. That's right, folks. 5 times, all in that chest cavity somewhere, still walking, talking, fighting because he was having methamphetamine.
Mm-hmm. Well, and all the stories you've ever heard about PCP, right? They're amazing stories. How does a human being punch through the windshield of a car? Well, the human body can generate significant force. What they don't tell you about that person is they break every single bone in their hand, maybe in their arm, but because they don't feel it at all, they continue to use it even though it's broken. They'll continue to squeeze the muscles and grab and do things because they just don't feel the pain.
Yep.
That's why they do such amazing things. And that's the same thing if they're on something like that and they get shot. And right, you're on some sort of stimulant. You've been up for 4 days, you've been on methamphetamine for 4 days, you haven't had any sleep, so you have that sleep-induced psychosis. That can be a very, very dangerous person. Absolutely.
Yep. Yep. And there's also types of mental illness, like being developmentally delayed and then adding in an illegal narcotic. People don't talk about that very often, but our law enforcement, our emergency room staff, EMS, fire, they deal with those types of people on a regular basis. And that's fine if they're just being a regular individual, but because of the introduction of illegal narcotics, sometimes become very, very dangerous.
Exactly. Well, and so many the mental health is so underserved. There are countless number of mental health patients out there that self-medicate with street drugs because they can't get help any other way. It's the only way that they can be functional. Some of them don't like the way that their prescription medications make them feel, and so they then choose to take these other medications. But anyway, so yes, you can have lots of people in lots of bad situations. using medications. The other thing, though, just getting back, trying to steer away a little bit, right? Because not every person you meet who attacks you is going to be a methed out, drugged out person. The person who's been a professional criminal is just going to be something most people are not used to, because violence is just part of their daily life. And so the application of and even the receiving of violence doesn't mean the same thing to them. And so that, to me, is something I think a lot of the general public don't get. That the thought of me cracking you in the head with my bat just doesn't mean the same thing to them that it would mean to most of us walking around.
Oh, absolutely. That's 100% true. And I mean, that goes a little bit deeper into psychology as to why that is. But, it's important that we recognize that more predatory behavior and response, because there are a lot of people with that mentality floating around. Actually, I think it's the FBI, actually, if I remember correct. I might be a little off on my stat, but estimates that about 20% of our population floats around through a couple of different segments of the dark triad, basically. So I'm sorry, I can't even speak. But it's important that we. What's that?
Sociopaths.
Yes, right. Sociopaths, narcissists, and Machiavellianism is it's important to recognize that triad, because again, like I said, 20% of our population runs around with that. And if you recognize the symptoms, now we're all a little narcissistic and sociopathic in our own ways, but recognizing those traits rather than you know than a full personality is important for some people who, especially if you're studying any kind of type of violence for like self-defense. And we talk about this on a pretty regular basis for whatever reason. I always blame TV and movies and that kind of stuff because we over consume that style of content, right? Y'all know Netflix and chill and all that fun stuff. But it's a great story to talk about violence and to talk about serial killers and all that kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is when we talk about violence, we are most often attacked by those people that we already know, whether that's a significant other, whether that's a coworker, whether that's somebody in our own household. So that's part of the paradigm shift that we are trying to have at our school is recognizing where true violence comes from.
Right, exactly. Most people think it's that bad guy way over there somewhere that probably is never going to get to me. Right, that's how most people think. Right, that'll never happen to me, and so I'm going to keep him way over there. And I bought this gun, I got my concealed carry, so now it's all good. I haven't, really ever fired it. I've only been to the range once, and I've had the gun for 3 years, but I'm prepared and I'm safe because I have it. And yeah, so it's when really, exactly, it's going to be the person that you're not expecting. That's the person that's going to get you, right? The person that you think, oh, they're so quiet, they're such a nice person. Look how they just sit over there and never do anything. They just keep to themselves. And then those are the people that turn out to be sometimes the worst people. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And, we actually, there's some study and controversy surrounding things like shootings or workplace violence and those kinds of things where we see these mass casualties happen. And a lot of times, if you actually go back and dig into the situation, you find out that they're actually, a lot of them are people who are attacking either a coworker or a significant other, and that's really the intended target, and everybody else is collateral damage, which again falls under either workplace violence or domestic violence most of the time. Even though it's categorized as a mass casualty event, it's important for us to also look at it in that perspective, because these are real situations that happen. It's your coworker, it's your spouse, it's people who know you, because we are driven and very emotional creatures, unfortunately, and we're driven by all sorts of different emotions and passions become violent.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And kind of circling back to my question, question of how I got into these things. Right. I started looking again for a more physical self-defense, what do I do when I'm not at work, right? It's fine to have a program at work where you're limited in what you can do to the person who attacks you because they're a patient, and so you can't actually hurt them, right? So that I think it's something that people need to understand too. When we respond to people inside the hospital, we don't get to respond like the police do. We have to respond and control this physical person who's attempting to hurt us and do whatever they can with every fiber of their being. And we have to be controlling of that without causing them injury.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so I started thinking, well, what happens when I'm alone in the parking lot going to my truck, and one of these people that I've made mad inside the hospital meets me in the parking lot, right? Or they've got their family member with them, or they've brought back, some sort of weapon, right? And so those are the things that made me start seeking out ways to defend myself. That, and I'm not getting any younger, right? I'm not always going to be bigger and stronger than other people, and again, that only takes you so far. And then my other thought was living here in the state of Oregon, where 80% of the people have wrestled at some point in their life. I decided I need to find something out about them. Right? I need to figure out how to counteract that whole wrestling mentality. So that's what started me down the physical realm that I was on.
Yeah, yeah. We found all sorts of different stuff, didn't we, Michael?
That's right. Proves you're never too old to learn something.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because again, if you're a little bit better today than you were yesterday, you're winning, right?
Absolutely. Right.
So that being said, as you guys have heard me say earlier, Michael is 6 foot. He's a big guy, strong skills, very skilled at martial arts. He's athletic. He's got this vast knowledge and background. That being said, Michael, I know you personally, so I can say that you are constantly pressure testing things, pushing the envelope, trying to learn more, adding more, trying to make sure that what we are teaching and what you're teaching is the very best and applicable to everybody. What is it about you that makes you continue to push that envelope? I mean, you obviously could hang your hat up on the skills that you have because you have such a vast background in grappling, Krav Maga, striking, firearms, all of that kind of different stuff, as well as your medical skills. Why do you keep pushing? Why do you keep learning more? What is it about that is intriguing to you, and why do you think it's so important?
Well, because I'm teaching other people, I feel responsible that what I'm teaching you is the truth. I don't want to give you information and teach you something, and then you go out there and use it and you find that it fails miserably, and that you then get hurt and you get injured, right? That to me would be, that's my nightmare. That's one of the things that keeps me up, right? Is that something that I'm teaching doesn't work under pressure in a real situation, right? And that's what's always gotten to me. And so, of course, the more I've trained, the more I've found, one, how many similarities there are in all the different martial arts. All the different striking things that I've trained and done stuff all start to have very similar points, and they come at it from different trails. The grappling, catch wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. There's always this catch wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. There's a little bit different mindset about how to accomplish the submission, but the submissions all look the exact same, right? I mean, there's only so many ways you can twist an arm and an ankle, and it all works. But the reason I keep looking and the reason I keep doing is because I feel responsible. If I'm going to teach people this is how you defend yourself. This is how you're going to stay safe. I have to know this is how you're going to stay safe. I have to have 1,000% assurance that what I'm showing you is the most effective thing that I've come across. And if somebody out there can show me something that's more effective than what I'm doing right now and prove it to me under stress, I will immediately switch and do and learn whatever it is you just showed me. I'm not above or afraid to say, hey, this thing I've been doing for the last 6 years, 8 years, turns out it's crap. Turns out there's a much better way of doing these things. Let me now show you this better way of doing things. And that's how, I think it's how you and I have both always been. But yeah, that's what drives me to keep training, to keep looking at things, is I feel a responsibility to the people I teach that what I'm teaching you is real. If I didn't think it was real, I wouldn't be teaching you this. So
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think that's fair. One last question for you. I know you got a busy schedule and we'll let you go. And this one's a doozy, so bear with me, right? Of all the people that you've trained, because you have such a huge list of folks you've trained with Apollo Ladra, Ryan Hoover, Boss Rutan, Randy Couture. I mean, there's so many people that we can start listing off that you've spent time with training underneath. Who in your mindset, who comes to mind when I ask who over delivered or surprised you with the amount of knowledge that was relevant that you can think of off the top of your head?
the amount of knowledge that was relevant.
Over delivered is kind of where I'm steering you toward.
That's a loaded question.
Right? It is.
So the training that the training I received from Near Monmouth has to be the thing that I feel has over delivered. Right, it's the thing that really changed a lot of my philosophy and the way I look at techniques that I'm doing or teaching or passing on to people or doing myself. Eric Paulson, it was simply magic. Watching him do stuff is magic to watch Eric Paulson do stuff. But I can't do the things Eric does. What Eric teaches is incredibly useful, and he's incredibly skilled. Randy Couture was so good and so smooth at what he did. It was incredible to work with him and just to feel how strong he was, and that when he would put you into an underhook and a certain grip, how strong he was and how much he had control of me. I didn't have control of me; he had control of me. And each thing, each instructor that I've trained with is always has incredible things that I find fascinating and useful. But the answer to the question is the thing that has over delivered and really changed my thought process in the last few years was Mir. I feel a very kindred spirit in Ryan Hoover and his philosophy of doing things that sometimes Krav Maga is a little too Krav Maga, and I agree with that. When you can't change what you're doing over the last 20 years because this is the way to do things, well, that sounds like a lot like the traditional martial arts. We've been doing this for 2,000 years. Why change? Well, because people figured out a better way to do it. Right? And everybody who has these big long lineages about Krav Maga, who they trained under, and how close they are to the fountain of Ian, that's great, but I think he would want to continue to progress. If he was still out there learning to do things, I don't think the Krav Maga he would develop today would look like the Krav Maga he developed when he developed it. So there's the long answer to the short question.
It was a loaded question, though. Well, there you have it, folks. This has been Michael Bann. It's the first time we've had him on the show, but sure as heck won't be the last time. Him and I have plenty of war stories and fun tidbits and tips to share with you. And I'm sure we'll be scheduling another call soon. So if you have more questions for Michael or more things you would like him to speak on, just message us. We'll make sure to answer him. You can find out more about what Michael is doing in all the seminars he hosts, from defending against handgun, active shooter with post-trauma care, hostage situation and parking lot attacks, on our website, which is cropsalem.com. And again, if you need to get in contact with Michael, let us know, info@cropsalem.com. We can certainly send off your messages and questions to him. Michael, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate you. And with the given situation of what's going around us currently all around the globe, we hope you stay safe and, we keep our thoughts with you as you kind of battle this pandemic in the workplace that you're dealing with all across the nation. It's not fun. This has affected everybody. I mean, young and old, rich and poor. It doesn't matter. It's affecting everybody. So just know that we're thinking about you, and you're doing some fantastic work over at the hospital you're working at.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Remember, wash your hands, stay at home.
Wonderful. All right. We will talk to you next time. Everybody else, join us for the next interview.